Hey, this is Tom from MVP Chess. Welcome back to my series on Bobby Fischer's seminal work, My 60 Memorable Games. In this video, we'll be analyzing game number 33 that Fischer played versus Trifunović in Bled 1961. If you're looking to improve your rook and pawn endings, this is a great game to study. Before we jump into the analysis, don't forget, smash that subscribe button and join Team MVP. Thanks for your support. So Trifunović was a Yugoslavian Serbian grandmaster who lived in Gligorić's shadow throughout his career, but still, he won the Yugoslavian championship 5 times. He was an international grandmaster. He represented his country in 7 chess Olympiads, and he also, according to Fischer, gained the reputation of being a player that was incredibly difficult to beat. So, let's see what happened in the game. Fischer, with the white pieces, plays e4 best by test, of course. And we have a Spanish on the board. After a6, castles, the main move in this position is bishop e7, but Trifunović opts for knight takes e4, so-called open variation of the Spanish. d4, b5. Now the main move in this position is d5, gaining a foothold in the center and solidifying this knight. But Trifunović instead decides to capture here. And after rook e1, d5, Fischer finds a really nice move in this position. Notice this pawn on d4 is defending the c3 square, but Fischer wants to bring his knight there. And if you have a key idea and your opponent is preventing it, of course, ask yourself, what happens if I do it anyway? And that's what Fischer did, and realized knight c3 is a great move in this position. In the game, Trifunović played bishop e6. Let's take a look at the most critical variation, of course, capturing the knight. We have bishop takes d5 with a nice double attack. Fischer could grab here on e4. He's menacing bishop takes c6 check, which is why queen takes d1 would be a huge mistake. Bishop e7 is called for, closing down the e-file, and now we see Fischer's idea, queen e2. Black's king cannot castle now. Okay, Fischer's down a pawn, but this is a decisive advantage because the king's just stuck in the center. If Trifunović were to castle here, bishop takes c6, wins a piece. Thank you very much. So, that's why we have bishop e6. Now, Fischer collects his material with interest, and material quality has been restored. So, a lot of fireworks there. The dust is finally settled. What did Fischer gain from that whole tactical operation? Well, I've highlighted it here. It's this pawn on e6. It's a huge weakness that Fischer can look to target during the middle game. So we have castles. Fischer's knight is currently pinned, so he steps out, queen g4, and we have an exchange here. And notice Fischer is going to start piling up his pieces on the e-file and targeting this weakness on e6. It's really important not only to create weaknesses as a chess player, but also be really target conscious. Once you've created them, coordinate your forces to attack that weak point. Tie your opponent's pieces down. So rook f6. Fischer continues with developing. He's able to develop his work with gain of time. Bishop d4. Nice job bringing the bishop to the long diagonal with gain of time. The queen's attacked, but it goes exactly where it wants to go, to the e-file. Notice Fischer is starting to gang up on this pawn on g6. Now, Trifunović does have some latent threats on g2, so that's why after rook d8, Fischer just takes a timeout. g3, now this rook on g6 is a moron. Fischer's king is completely safe, and he can get back to targeting this weak pawn. Queen d5, rook e1, triple stack on the e-file. So Trifunović, after c5, rook d6, bishop e5, and bishop f4, he decides, you know what, I am going to play c4 in this position and just sacrifice the pawn for activity. I don't want to saddle myself in a passive position, and I think this was probably the prudent decision by Trifunović. He got outplayed in the opening. He played a dubious line that Fischer refuted, and now he's got to suffer the consequences, but at least for his troubles, he's going to get some activity. So, of course, Fischer collects his pawn, grabs on a6, And we have bishop takes b2. So let's take stock of what's going on in this position. We noticed that Trifunović has gotten some activity. Okay, so his rook's active, his bishop's active, but he is down a pawn. Now, this is one of the longer games in my 60. I think it's, 73 move game. We are only at move 30 right now. So there are going to be some times during this rook and pawn ending that I'm going to skip forward rather quickly, but I'll be sure to hit all the critical moments. So Fischer gets behind the pawn, wins this one, rinse and repeat, and is able to liquidate into a rook and pawn ending, okay, where he definitely stands better. Without that dark square bishop on the board, Trifunović has a little less counterplay, so Fischer just looking to consolidate his extra pawn advantage. So after rook e2, that's kind of where we're at in the position. Fischer has this extra pawn, so he has a 3-on-2 kingside majority that he's going to look to push down the board and win the game. Both players centralize their kings. Good technique. Fischer puts pressure on this pawn on c4. After king f5, it would have been best here, now this wasn't the game continuation, for Fischer to just take this pawn. Okay, and after king b3, we don't need to worry about the king's activity on the king side. This passed c pawn is just going to win the game. But instead, Fischer took a timeout and played f3, just boxing the king out. And after c3, Fischer played another kind of passive move. Best here, this wasn't the game continuation, again, is just to take the c pawn. We don't need to worry about the king activity or black winning a pawn on the king side. It's all about this passed c pawn, our king activity and our rook activity, and just pushing the passer. So some surprisingly slow play by Fischer that definitely prolonged this game. Fischer said it probably prolonged it by at least 20 moves. He definitely should have grabbed that c-pawn and just started pushing his passer. But both sides begin with their respective plans. Fischer pushing his kingside majority. Trifunović trying to hold on to the c-pawn and keep counterplay alive and deliver annoying checks to disrupt Fischer's coordination. So notice Trifunović playing for maximum activity, targeting this pawn. He's managed to hold on to the c-pawn, which is the key difference in this position in what happened in the game versus the variations that we looked at before. This c-pawn shouldn't be on the board. It's really causing Fischer a lot of problems, and the game should probably be over by now. But, of course, Fischer is still much better. Right now, he just takes some time repeating the position, gaining time on the clock. Of course, he doesn't want a repetition. He's up 2 pawns. Rook takes g3, rook d7, and Fischer takes a moment to displace the king before going to win this pawn on h5. Now his strategy is simple, okay? Capture on h5 and just push these connected passers, okay? And we can even get into a position where White is able to ultimately sacrifice this rook for this pass c-pawn, knowing that these 2 connected passers are going to be stronger than a rook. Keep that in mind, okay, as we review the rest of the game. King d4, rook takes, rook h8, Fischer bringing his rook to the back rank out of the way of the pass pawns. He's just going to look to mobilize him now. Now, Trifunović is trying to deliver rear checks here, but notice king c6 is a nice escape square that Fischer has in the position, so no issues there, okay? Rear checks can be a good drawing technique for the defensive player, but here Fischer is able to escape. Rook g1, rook d8. Fischer shuffling a bit, and now he's going to look for decisive activity with his king. Notice he's defending the rook on e8 now. Rook takes e8 would be obviously a totally hopeless king and pawn ending. But after Trifunović grabs, Now we have the position that we foreshadow, okay? Fischer understands this. Yes, this passed pawn really can't be stopped without sacrificing the rook, but it doesn't matter because these two far advanced passed pawns are going to be stronger than this rook, specifically because this king is in Siberia. It's all the way over on the queen side trying to push this passer through. Meanwhile, Fischer's king is perfectly placed, ready to escort these pawns. Rook h2, Fischer pushes, and after rook c8, Trifunović sees the writing on the wall. He knows what's up. He's a grandmaster. He knows this is completely losing. After king b3 and king g7, he resigned. So let's just play a few more moves just to show you this winning technique. So Trifunović does manage to promote his passer, but we just take. And even if these pawns, now Fischer had already advanced this pawn to the 7th rank. These pawns could be even further back and it would still be winning. The rook just can't stop them in this advanced stage. So that's why after king b3, king g7, Trifunović resigned the game. So Fischer states, as we were talking about before, Trifunović was a very difficult player to beat. This was his only loss during the entire Bled tournament. His only loss came to Fischer. So great win by Fischer. Players who are really defensive and positional and are just totally content making draws are really frustrating to play. Very often to create winning chances, you have to take some risks, which is what they're relying on. But I really liked how Fischer refuted his plan in the opening, was able to create a weak pawn on e6, nicely targeted by triplet on the e-file, went up a pawn and then just converted that ending. So just really incredible overall technique from Fischer. I mean, this took really a universal approach. Great opening prep, great middle game play, great end game play to grab the full point. So I hope you really enjoyed this game, and I hope it's improved your understanding of rook and pawn endings. Don't forget, smash that subscribe button. Join Team MVP. You're not going to want to miss my next installment, which will be game number 34. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and happy Veterans Day. Take care.